Welcome back, everyone. Ready to deep dive with us again? This time, we're taking a look at the hottest summer romances of 2024.
Oh, summer romances.
Mhm.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, so we're using Entertainment Weekly's 7 best list as our guide, but, it's not just about, swooning over these books. I think what's really interesting is what these books tell us about what's going on right now. What are people thinking about? What are they interested in?
That's a great point. Romance novels often reflect the anxieties and the desires of the time they're written in, like what's on people's minds.
Exactly. So one of the big trends Entertainment Weekly pointed out was this move away from the typical rich and famous romances. Like, apparently people are really into stories where characters are dealing with money problems, like regular people stuff.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. There's definitely a growing awareness of things like, economic inequality, people are struggling, and maybe readers want to see that reflected in their fiction.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got 2 books that really dive into this theme. First up is One Last Summer by Kate Spencer. Have you heard of this one?
I haven't read it yet, but I've heard good things.
So it's about this camp counselor, Clara, who's like totally burnt out. She goes back to her hometown and kind of rekindles things with her childhood sweetheart.
Ah, the second chance romance. Always a classic.
Right. But it's more than that, though. Claire's also trying to figure out, what she really wants out of life,
Yeah.
finding meaning outside of work, all that.
Finding meaning in a simpler life. I think that's something a lot of people can relate to these days. Getting away from the hustle culture.
Totally. And, well, let's just say there's a certain boathouse scene that suggests she finds a little bit of passion along the way, too.
Ooh, sounds intriguing. What's the second book?
Okay, so this one is The Mistress Experience by Scarlett Peckham. It's a Regency romance, but with a twist.
Oh, a twist. I love a good twist. What is it?
Okay, so it's about a courtesan named Tyus who is hired by an earl who, well, he's struggling with impotence.
Wow. Okay, so definitely pushing the boundaries of traditional historical
Yeah,
romance.
for sure. But what's really impressive is how Peckham handles it. It's like sensitive and empathetic, but also still funny.
I think it's great that romance novels are starting to tackle these kinds of issues, things that have maybe been taboo in the past.
Definitely. It's like we're seeing a more nuanced exploration of intimacy and sexuality.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, how much is that reflecting a shift in society itself? Like, are we just more open to talk about these things now?
Maybe. Okay, ready for something completely different. Entertainment Weekly called this next theme Reimagining Classics.
Ooh, reimagining classics. That sounds fun. What do we have?
All right, so there's just one book in this category, Marriage and Masti by Nisha Sharma. It's like a modern Indian take on Shakespeare's Twelfth Night.
Okay, now that sounds really interesting. I love Twelfth Night.
Yeah, it's super clever how Sharma blends, those classic tropes like mistaken identity and all the romantic misunderstandings with contemporary Indian family dynamics.
So like a fusion of cultures and comedy. Sign me up.
Right. So our main character, Vera, ends up in a fake marriage with her best friend, who she's secretly in love with, of course. His name's Deepak.
Fake relationship trope. Always a good one.
The best. But, it's got that fresh cultural spin on it. And Entertainment Weekly even mentioned a balcony scene that is supposedly quite steamy.
Steamy balcony scene. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. But I also like that you mentioned the family dynamics and cultural elements. It's not just all about the romance, right?
Right. It's also about family expectations, cultural identity, and, finding the courage to kind of break free from tradition. It's like Vera's really trying to figure out who she is and what she wants.
That's really cool. So we've got love and financial worries, a courtesan challenging norms, and a Shakespearean rom-com set in India.
Quite the mix, right? Like, these summer romances are really serving up something for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And we're just getting started. I can't wait to see what other insights we uncover as we keep going. There's so much more to explore. It really is amazing how much variety there is in these books.
I know, right? Like, we've got everything from, fake relationships to courtesans.
And speaking of breaking free from expectations, Entertainment Weekly grouped a few of these books under the theme of identity and finding your voice. Seems like that's a pretty big deal in these stories.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it makes sense. Like, we're constantly being told who we should be and how we should live, right? So seeing characters struggle with that, trying to figure out their own path, it just feels really relevant.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
figuring out who you are in a world that's always trying to define you. That's something everyone can relate to, I think.
Okay, so the first book in this category is The Truth According to Ember by Danica Nava. This one really stood out to me because it features a Native American protagonist, Ember, who hides her identity to get ahead at work.
Oh, wow. That's a tough situation to be in.
Right, like she feels like she has to downplay who she is to fit in, but then she ends up feeling lost.
Losing a part of yourself to gain acceptance, that's got to be hard.
And then, of course, it gets even more complicated when she falls for the native daddy IT guy, Dan Woa.
Ooh, forbidden love.
Yeah,
Or, well, maybe not forbidden exactly, but definitely complicated.
totally. And I mean, it's not just about the romance, right? It's about Ember coming to terms with her heritage and finding her own voice.
Right, embracing her true self. That's a powerful message.
It is. Okay, ready for another historical romance?
Always. What do we got?
This one's called Ne'er Duke Well by Alexander Vasti, and it's about this American-raised Duke, Peter Kent, who is completely out of his element in British society.
Oh, a fish out of water story. Those are always fun.
So Lady Selina Ravenscroft comes to his rescue, helping him find a wife and all that. But here's the twist. Selina runs a secret erotic lending library.
Whoa, okay, now that's a twist I didn't see coming. An erotic lending library in Regency, England.
I know, right? Like, can you imagine the scandal?
I bet there are some hilarious scenes in this book.
Oh, for sure. But it's not all just fun and games. Both Peter and Selina are dealing with some pretty heavy stuff from their pasts.
Ah, so there's some emotional depth there, too.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they're both trying to protect themselves from getting hurt again.
Sounds like a good mix of humor and heart. Okay, are you ready to venture into the afterlife?
The afterlife.
Yeah, remember Entertainment Weekly had that category, love, death, and second chances. This work is really interesting.
Oh, right. I almost forgot about that.
So we've got The Love of My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood, and it starts with our heroine, Delphi, choking on a burger and ending up in the afterlife waiting room.
Wait, choking on a burger, that's how it starts?
Yep. Talk about an attention-grabbing opening.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, but what happens next?
Well, she meets her soulmate, Jonah, in the afterlife.
Yeah.
But thankfully, he's only, temporarily unconscious.
Oh, okay, so he's not actually dead.
Nope, just taking a little nap. And Delphi gets a chance to go back to Earth to get a kiss from him.
A kiss?
Yeah, a kiss. But she only has 10 days to do it.
10 days to get a kiss from her soulmate? That's intense.
It is. But it's not just about the kiss, though, right? It's about Delphi learning to appreciate life and, facing her fears.
That's deep.
And quirky. Greenwood's writing is super funny. But yeah, there's a lot packed into this story. Okay, ready for something a little lighter?
Later, after a trip to the afterlife, please, yes.
All right, so remember that Love, Laughs, and Dogs category, pardon my Frenchie, by Farrah Rochon, is the one to watch out for.
Oh, dogs. I love a good dog romance. Tell me more.
Okay, so it's set in New Orleans, and we've got Ashanti who runs a dog boarding business.
Cute?
It is. And there's this adorable viral video of her dog, Duchess, sharing a treat with another dog named Puddin.
Oh, stop. That's precious.
Right. But here's the thing. Ashanti and Puddin's owner, Thaddeus, are kind of rivals. They both want the same property.
Oh, so there's some competition?
Yep, but also some serious chemistry. And Thaddeus is a bit of a grump, so you know that opposites attract thing is going to come into play.
I love a grumpy hero.
Me too. But, Rochon doesn't shy away from some real-life issues, too, like infidelity and the challenges veterans face.
So it's got some depth to it.
Yeah, definitely. But it's also just a really fun, heartwarming read. Perfect for those of us who love a good dog story.
So where are we at now? We've got characters worried about money, a courtesan shaking things up, a Shakespearean rom-com in India, a Native American woman finding her voice, a duke who needs help fitting in, a second chance at love in the afterlife, and a dog boarding business romance.
It's a lot.
Uh-huh.
Right. And we haven't even touched on all the books yet, but I think we're starting to see some pretty clear trends emerging, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, totally. It's like people want stories that are relatable, characters who face real problems and make mistakes. And maybe, finding love in the midst of all that chaos.
Exactly. And it's interesting to think about why that is, right? Like, what does it say about what we're all going through right now?
Maybe it's just that we're all looking for a little bit of hope.
A little bit of hope and a happy ending. I think we could all use a little bit of that these days.
Yeah, I think so too. So much for light and breezy summer reads, huh? These books are really making us think.
I know, right? It's kind of amazing how much depth there is to these stories. Like, yeah, we've got the romance and the happily ever afters, but there's also this real sense of, grappling with real life stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's what makes them so compelling, you know? Like, it's not just about escaping into a fantasy world, it's about seeing ourselves reflected in these characters and their struggles and their triumphs.
Absolutely. It's like these authors are saying, hey, life is messy, but love can still bloom in the cracks.
And it's not just about individual struggles either. We're seeing a lot of these books tackle bigger societal issues too, like we were talking about with economic inequality and the need for more diverse voices.
Right. It's like romance novels are becoming this space where we can explore all these different facets of the human experience, both personal and societal. And I think that's really powerful.
Totally. Like, remember how in one last summer, Claire's burnout wasn't just a plot device? It was like a commentary on how so many people are feeling these days.
Yeah, that whole hustle culture thing and the pressure to always be on,
hmm
it's exhausting. And I think a lot of readers are looking for stories that acknowledge that, stories that offer a different vision of success and happiness.
Exactly. And it's not just about work either. It's about relationships too. Like, we're seeing a shift away from those old school romances where the hero just swoops in and fixes everything.
Yeah, like the damsel in distress trope. I'm glad that's fading away. It's much more interesting to see couples working together, like equals, each with their own strengths and weaknesses.
Like Tias and the Earl in the Mistress Experience, they were facing a really tough challenge, but they were facing it together. And that felt so much more real and relatable than, some fairy tale where everything is perfect.
Exactly. And that's not just happening in contemporary romances either. We're seeing that same shift in historical romances too. Like authors are really challenging those old gender roles and power dynamics.
Totally. Like, think about Ne'er-Duke Well. Selena wasn't just some helpless lady waiting for a duke to rescue her. She was a smart, capable businesswoman who was totally in control of her own life. And Peter, even though he was a duke, was the one who needed her help to figure things out.
It's a nice change of pace, right? And it shows how historical romance can be more than just escapism. It can also be a way to examine social norms and see how our ideas about gender and power have evolved over time.
So, we've talked about a lot of big ideas today, but I guess the question is, why does all this matter? Like, why should our listeners care about what's happening in the world of romance novels?
Well, for starters, it shows that the genre is alive and well.
Mm.
Like, it's not stuck in the past. It's evolving and changing to reflect the world around us. And that's exciting. It means there are more stories out there than ever before, stories that speak to a wider range of experiences and perspectives.
Exactly. So if you're a romance reader, it means you've got more choices than ever before. You can find books that challenge you, make you think, and maybe even help you see the world in a new way. And even if you're not a diehard romance fan, I think it's still worth paying attention to what's happening in the genre.
It's true. Like, it can tell us a lot about our culture, about what we're worried about, what we're hoping for, what we value.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love for everyone listening to think about the themes and trends we've talked about.
hmm
Which ones resonated with you? What do they tell you about our society and where we're headed? And maybe, just maybe, this conversation will inspire you to pick up one of these summer romances and see what all the buzz is about. You never know, you might just discover your next favorite book.
Happy reading, everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.